Good evening, everyone. My name is William D'Alessandro, and I'd like to welcome you back to another Tech Talk in our series sponsored by Bracklet. Today, we have the pleasure of welcoming Ian Buchanan to give us a brief talk on UX best practices. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to you, Ian.
Thank you, Will. I would also like to thank Bracklet for sponsoring this Tech Talk. Today we will be diving into web accessibility specifically, or sometimes shortened to A11Y. My hope is to share why web accessibility is important beyond being just some obscure functionality to check off the to-do list as a developer or something to impress stakeholders with, but that it has a real impact on individuals. So to talk about web accessibility, we have to dive into assistive technology, what it is and who it is for. Assistive technology is a blanket term that includes devices, software, and equipment that enhance learning, working, and daily life for people with disabilities and others with accessibility needs, which will most likely include all of us at some point in time. Now, I think for the most part, we tend to associate accessibility with disabilities and assume a permanence of a person's condition or limitations, overlooking the fact that accessibility can benefit people in temporary or situational contexts as well. Accessibility encompasses a far more dynamic and adaptable concept than how it is commonly understood. A person's needs can also be situational and temporary, or even a combination of challenges or barriers. Let's take a look at some of these situational and temporary needs. Situational needs might include high contrast mode or dark mode settings for navigating a web page on a really sunny day, or closed captioning or transcripts for video and audio media while working in a noisy coffee shop. Even more importantly, when navigating a stressful medical situation, intuitive navigation for a healthcare provider website becomes really important. Temporary needs or short-term impairments could include a broken wrist and using a keyboard navigation or speech-to-text tools, or recovering from an infection that causes hearing loss and leading to the need for subtitles or visual alerts to get work done. Now, individuals with permanent visual, motor, cognitive, or auditory impairments depend extensively on assistive technologies to navigate and engage with the digital world effectively. Assistive technology like Otter AI can convert audio to text for those with hearing loss, or for those with motor barriers, a voice-to-command tool like Dragon Natural Speaking allows users to dictate text and control the computer using voice commands, allowing users to convert spoken words into written text and enabling hands-free operation of various applications. Tools that provide text-to-speech functionality or offer step-by-step guided processes can create a more inclusive and supportive experience for individuals navigating neurodivergence. These tools help reduce cognitive load and ensure clarity, making digital environments more welcoming and user-friendly. As someone who is dyslexic myself, I can personally share how challenging it can be to navigate poorly designed web pages. Small, unconventional fonts often make reading feel like a real struggle, and dense, unstructured content can be overwhelming and hard to process. Though I think we can all relate to this. Clear layouts, readable fonts, and accessible design choices aren't just helpful, they're essential for making digital spaces more inclusive and user-friendly. When it comes to visual disabilities, such as low vision and blindness, text-to-speech tools as VoiceOver for Mac and TalkBack for Android become integral parts of a person's daily life. These technologies allow people to leverage their phones and computers without visual interaction with those devices. Now, I'd like to introduce a dear friend of mine who not only uses assistive technology, but depends on it to lead an independent and rich life. Meet my friend Jerry Coons. He gives guided walking tours of San Francisco, is excellent at cooking, grilling, and drinking wine, loves the arts, theater, dance, galleries, you name it, is 100% blind, and uses screen readers and VoiceOver to navigate web-based technologies. So what does Jerry have to say about this topic of web accessibility? Quote, independence and personal choice are desired by most members of our free world. Exploring and navigating information on the web is essential to participating in the information age for print-challenged people. Standards and tools have been created to allow access. Why not use them to allow inclusion? End quote. So what does inclusion look like on the web? Well, our journey of inclusion starts with creating affordances. What are affordances? Well, in the context of web technology, affordances are the features of a user interface that show people how to use it. For example, if an element is meant to be a button, this should be apparent to the user, regardless if they're interacting with that button through a GUI or assistive technology. So how do we, for example, ensure, let's say, a beautifully designed web app to include these affordances? How does assistive technology even interact with said web app? Well, this is where the accessibility tree comes in. In 2008, the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative drafted up standards like the Accessible Rich Internet Applications, or ARIA for short. The concept of the accessibility tree began to gain importance as browsers implemented ARIA and started creating mappings for assistive technology to use. Currently, definition is as follows. The accessibility tree and the DOM tree are parallel structures. The accessibility tree includes the user interface objects of the user agent and the objects of the document. Accessible objects are created in the accessibility tree for every DOM element that should be exposed to assistive technology, either because it may fire an accessibility event or because it has properties, relationships, or features which needs to be exposed. And now let's take a quick look at what this accessibility tree looks like. Here we have an HTML of a simple web page and its corresponding accessibility tree in a JSON format. We can see that the shape of these two trees are very similar, but let's take a closer look at what the differences are. Here we are looking at a header element with an H1 header and some simple navigation. As HTML elements are parsed to produce the accessibility tree, they inherit a role value based on their type. These roles categorize elements into different functional groups, such as links, buttons, headings, providing semantic meaning that assistive technology relies on. Additionally, some elements serve as landmarks, which help define the overall structure of a web page. Common landmarks include banner, navigation, main, and content info. These landmarks enable users to navigate efficiently between major sections of a page, improving accessibility and usability. So far, the accessibility tree does not look so different from the DOM, but in these last examples, we were using semantic HTML. What happens to the accessibility tree when we spam our DOM with, let's say, a bunch of div tags instead? Well, we start losing meaningful role values as div elements will default to role of generic. You can see how the accessibility tree starts losing structure and contextual meaning. Where meaningful roles and landmarks would lend themselves to obvious navigation and meaning, the div tags leave the accessibility tree in a state of obscurity. This begins to expose why semantic HTML is so important, not only for accessibility purposes, but also for developers as well. A developer diving into a new code base will have a much easier time understanding HTML components if semantic HTML like the nav tag is used over a div, giving immediate clarity of what the component and its purpose is without even diving into the logic of said component. So now that we have taken a look at the accessibility tree, let's see it in action through the assistive technology tool VoiceOver. So VoiceOver has a distinct navigation system called the rotor, which lets a user navigate a web page through different element types, such as like links, headers, and landmarks, to name a few. So let's say Jerry, my friend I introduced earlier, is using a rotor to navigate a list of links pulled from a web page. These links are pulled out of the context that might have given them more meaning and now are only represented by the text assigned to them. All of a sudden, he might be navigating a list of links that say, click here, learn more, details, which gives Jerry no indication of what those links might point to, and informs us that not only semantic HTML is important, but meaningful content and labels are also crucial for usability. Jerry can offer us an important perspective on this by describing what visiting a web page for the first time is like for him. So Jerry described this to me the other day. He said, going to a web page for the first time using like VoiceOver or screen reader for him is like being handed a mystery box. Before you open it, you have no idea what's in, how it is organized, if it is even organized. And the only way to find out if that mystery box has what you're looking for is by literally looking at one item at a time in hopes that you can deduce meaning from how items are organized, if things have labels or meaningful shape to them. This is why it's so important to be aware of assistive technology and all the ways that the web can be navigated. So what have we learned? We have seen that assistive technology covers a wide range of use cases. Accessibility needs can be situational, temporary, or permanent. And in the words of Jerry, accessibility is usability. So I hope the next time you are working on the front end and go to grab a div or set some link text that you take a moment to ask yourself if there's a more semantic or meaningful option. Knowing that by doing so, you ensure that Jerry and so many other users that rely on assistive technology are given the same affordances as everyone else. Thank you for listening. Here are my cited works, and are there any questions? Yes, Ellie.
Thank you so much, Ian. I was just wondering, as someone who's newer to learning about accessibility in coding, where do you recommend that someone get started, like with their first steps in making their code more accessible?
Yeah, thank you for the great question. And this is somewhere I found myself was really being passionate about this and diving in, and then realizing that, the best place to start is semantic HTML. There's so many semantic tags to leverage just kind of right off the bat. I mean, you have your headers, your navs, main, section, articles, asides, but also you have things like more nuanced things like figure and fig caption, forms, field sets, legends, even things, details and summaries. So like just using those out of the kind of right off the bat are going to be super helpful. You might be tempted to dive into ARIA labels, which are really, really cool, allow for some really detailed interactions, especially when it comes to accessibility. But it's really easy to either overdo, and by trying to implement accessibility on purpose, you can really kind of overshoot and actually make things worse. So I think the best thing is to start with semantic HTML and also alt text for images. I cannot express how huge that is for people to actually get to know what the images are about, especially with like really rich image web pages. Like that can really bring so much meaning to someone's experience on a web page. So yeah, semantic HTML. Dig into it and see what you can find.
Thank you
Great
so
question.
much.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email about accessibility topics for both digital and physical spaces. I think it's just really important and a really, really interesting topic. So feel free to reach out. And I would like to thank Bracklet again for sponsoring this Tech Talk, and I will pass it back to you, William. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that informative talk. And thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We'll see you at the next one.